All right, boys and girls, I'm going to start reading again. This time I'm going to start on page 46 of All the Grays on Greene Street. And this one is called Still in Love. As soon as we saw Huan Yan's neon sign, my stomach started to grumble again. It only got worse when we went inside. Apollo and I took 2 seats at one of the big round tables. A big family was already seated at the other half, everybody happily talking at the same time. Not for the first time, I wished I understood Chinese. A waiter came over right away with a metal teapot, filling the short amber glasses in front of us with steaming hot tea. I put a lot of sugar in mine. Apollo doesn't put any. We didn't even bother to look at the menu because we always get the same thing. Sushan pork, cold sesame noodles, and water vegetable, which is sort of like spinach but crunchier and less disgusting. We drank some tea and I said, "It sounded like your girlfriend was pretty mad about dinner." I was pretty sure this one's name was Sorry, but not sure enough to say it. I did know that she was a sound artist, whatever that was. The last one was an art critic. The one before that was a mime. That one, Apollo said with a dismissive flick. He took a swig of his beer, then pushed the bottle over to me so that I could remove the label. "You're always friends with them after you break up with them. It's the boyfriend part that you're not good at." Apollo shrugged and took his beer bottle back, rubbing with his thumb at the sticky glue I'd left behind. I pressed the damp label I'd peeled off the bottle onto the circle of green glass covering the Pepto-Bismol pink tablecloth, meticulously smoothing out the wrinkles. "Are you in love with her?" I asked. It was a rude question, but Apollo would rather answer a rude question than do what he calls chit-chat. Apollo thought for a moment. "I am not in love with her, no," he said, "but we have a good time together when she's not so mad." "How come?" I asked. "How come you're not in love with her? Is she pretty?" "She is very pretty, Olympia," he said, "but many people are pretty." "Pretty, thank God, is not everything." He waggled his eyebrows like that, then struck a pose with his hand behind his head like a model in a magazine. The family across from us found this very amusing, so he was like this. "Is she nice?" "Yes, she's very nice. She is a good person and smart, but those things aren't everything either." Then the waiter came with the food, and the 2 of us dug in. We made a lot of noise. It's not rude to slurp noodles. What you're supposed to do is bite them. But what you're not supposed to do is bite them. When I was little, the waiters used rubber bands and a wad of paper between the tops of my chopsticks to make them easier to use, but last year Apollo showed me how to use them as the regular way. It's not hard, but your hands have to be big enough. Pretty soon, Sushan peppercorn firecrackers were going off in my mouth, and my lips were burning in a way that made them feel like they were twice their normal size. After a few bites, my whole face had gone numb, all the way to the bottom of my eyes. Zombie Chinese. I don't know why anybody would want to do that to themselves on purpose. I don't get it. I don't like spicy hot things. Do you guys like spicy hot things? When we started to slow down, something occurred to me. Apollo always had a girlfriend, but he never seemed to be in love with any of the women he went on dates with. "Hey, Apollo, have you ever been in love?" That surprised him, and he chewed away at the noodles in his mouth like he wished they weren't in there. "I'm just curious," I told him. Curiosity goes a long way with Apollo, which is good because I can't do anything about mine. I never understood when grown-ups say, "Don't tell me, I don't want to know." I always want to know. He chewed some more, swallowed, and then there wasn't anything to do but answer me. "Yes, Olympia, I have been in love." He sighed and looked around for a waiter, holding his beer bottle up to ask for a new one. "What happened?" "Nothing happened. She married someone else." That surprised me. "What? How could she marry someone else when you loved her? Was it because the way you look?" That made him laugh. "No, I don't think so. It was complicated. There were other factors." Remember, he had said that he's probably one of the ugliest people she's ever seen because all the scars on his face. The waiter came over with the new beer, but Apollo didn't drink from it right away. The family at our table laughed uproariously as something the mom said, and the dad slapped his knee in appreciation, something I'd never seen outside of a cartoon. I turned to see if Apollo had seen it too, but he wasn't looking at me. He picked up a piece of pork, inspected it for a minute, and then put it down on his plate, squaring off his chopsticks. Then it hit me. Holy cow, I thought, he's still in love with her. That was why Apollo couldn't fall in love with someone new. He was already in love with someone. I thought about the poor sound artist, or whatever her name was. She probably didn't know that getting stood up for dinner was the least of her problems. At that very moment, the mom across the table started to tell a story. She waved her hands and talked so fast and so loud that Apollo and I didn't even have to pretend that we weren't watching. If you can't help being a naturally curious person like me, eavesdropping is an excellent hobby. Apollo is also a champion eavesdropper. He says it's how his English is so good. That would totally be me at a restaurant. I talk way too loud, and I talk with my hands, and I talk fast, which all of you guys know I talk fast and loud. When the mom saw we were watching, her gestures and eyebrow waggles got even bigger. Then, with a gigantic wave that started out looking like she was welcoming a king and turned into a gesture that looked more like she was decapitating a chicken, the story was done. The punchline made everyone at the table clap and laugh. Apollo and I were so caught up in her dramatics that we clapped too. Shy suddenly, the mom dropped her chin to her chest and smiled while the rest of the family talked excitedly, repeating the final gesture to make the others laugh. Apollo had gone back to messing around with the food on his plate. He looked sad, sadder than I'd ever seen him, so sad he almost looked handsome. Whoever she was, it was serious. "Hey," I said, "tell me about a color?" He knew I was trying to distract him, but he still looked relieved. He leaned back in his chair and took a long pull on his beer. "Have I ever told you about Egyptian brown?" I shook my head, a little disappointed. Brown is my least favorite color. Well, Egyptian brown was the color in the 19th century. Many artists swore it was the best brown paint they'd ever used, soft and velvety with warm, sweet tones of yellow and green. It was transparent too, which made it perfect for skin or to depict the plaster walls of a room in the magic light of the late afternoon. I imagined painting my mom's room as it had looked that afternoon, the sun leaking weakly into the dim room through the white cotton curtains covering the windows, my mom laying without moving in the bed. But it was controversial. Some painters said that it was unpredictable, that the color was never the same twice, that you never knew what would come out of the tube. Others complained that it was hard to work with and that it cracked and changed in the chemistry of other paints if you mixed them. This was very common with the paints that we mixed by hand. Not all of them play well together, Apollo says. It's a type of thing you just have to know. He continued, "They don't use it, this Egyptian brown, anymore. Do you know why?" I shook my head, humoring him. Apollo is not usually boring when he talks about color, but so far this has not been great. Apollo sat back and crossed his arms over his chest. "Because they ran out of mummies." "What?" I said so loud the family at our table looked over at me in alarm. "You heard me. They ran out of mummies. Egyptian brown, also known as mummy brown, was made up of ground up Egyptian mummies mixed with myrrh and white pitch." That's really gross. I was so appalled I could barely make words. They were painting with people? With ground up dead people? Well, people and animals. The ancient Egyptian mummified a great number of their pets as well so that people could have company in the afterlife. Mostly cats, but others also. Even an alligator. Digging up mummies was a booming trade for the Victorians. They made medicines from them and fertilizer. They unwrapped them for fun at parties. And of course, they used them to make Egyptian brown. Okay, first of all, I am never going to a party where they're going to unwrap a mummy. That's just weird. Do you want to go to that party? I don't. So please don't invite me. This was the most disgusting thing I'd ever heard of. I didn't care how nice the brown was. I didn't even feel great about sepia, which comes from the ink cuttlefish made when they're scared. Plenty of things make nice browns, and most of them are just plain old dirt. Apollo, would you paint with a ground up dead person? Of course not, but many artists didn't know how Egyptian brown was made until the paint companies had to explain why it was getting so hard to come by. The painter, Edward Burne-Jones, felt the way he did when he found out. The painter Edward Burne-Jones felt the way you did when he found out. The story is that he took his last remaining tube of Egyptian brown out to his yard and gave it a proper burial. I pushed my plate away, disgusted now by the slimy brown sauce, thinking about all the hours those artists had spent pushing paint made of dead people around on a canvas. What would it feel like to look at the work you'd made with that paint once you knew? Apollo signaled for the check and laid the money to pay for it on the little plastic tray. We said goodbye to our friends at the table, to our waiter, and to the lady who's always at the cash register up front, and then we were back on East Broadway. It was cooler, almost cold, and I hugged my sweatshirt tightly around me, the little faucets heavy in the kangaroo pocket at the front. A few blocks later, Apollo broke the silence. You are a very quiet little bird. What are you thinking about? Thinking about my mom, who did not get out of bed this morning, and I'm wondering if she will get up tomorrow. I'm trying to figure out how I can get my dad to come home if nobody, not even you, knows what he's doing or how to reach him, and I'm worrying about what will happen to me if he doesn't. I didn't say any of that. Thinking about Egyptian brown, I said, which was also true. Can't stop wondering if it's possible to make something beautiful out of something awful. Apollo's face looked handsome, sad again. A lot of people would say that's exactly what art is, he said, shaking my hand, and I let him. We didn't talk much on the way home either. All right. Let's do one more little chapter. It's only a few pages. It's called A Long Way Down. This is page 54. Hold up, I forgot my sweatshirt, I told Alex, who was sitting cross-legged on the loading dock outside my house. It was Saturday morning, and we were going to Washington Square Park like always. Race you, Alex said, already halfway up the building wall. One of the things that Alex likes to do best is climb. He can climb anything, including a lot of things that regular people can't, like the front of my building. Alex the cat, my mother always calls him, or something, or sometimes Alex the cat burglar. So a cat burglar is like a robber at night. To get up the front of my building, he jumps from the standpipe on the sidewalk onto the decorative brickwork running up the front. The grooves barely deep enough for the tips of his fingers, wedging the rubber soles of his sneakers into the cracks to climb. Then he reaches out to grab the metal ladder coming down from the fire escape, swings himself up and over, and more often than not comes in through our window without knocking, which my mom does not enjoy. Alex makes stuff like that look like it's no big deal. I once jumped off a wall that was taller than my dad because Alex had made it look so easy, and I practically broke every single bone in my body and bit my tongue in half. He's good at normal sports like baseball and basketball too, but he doesn't like them as much as he likes messing around. You know that part in Singing in the Rain where the other guy, not Gene Kelly, runs straight up the side of the wall and does a flip at the top and then lands on the feet at the bottom? I love that movie. That was my mom's favorite movie too, Singing in the Rain. We found an old mattress on the street one time, and Alex pulled it up to the wall and spent the entire day practicing that move, and by the time it was dark, he could do it. I wouldn't let him try it without the mattress because I am not in the business of scooping sidewalk brains, and also we are both scared of his mom. Still, it was pretty cool to watch him run straight up the wall like that. That's pretty cool. Even though I can't help but say, please don't try that. Even though I use the hallway stairs like a regular person and go as fast as I can, I never ever beat Alex to my apartment when he's climbing up the front. That morning was no different. I whipped open the door of our apartment only to see Alex through the window, lying on his back on the fire escape. His arms made a comfortable pillow for his head, and his eyes were closed like he'd been out there for hours. He wasn't even out of breath. With his eyes closed, he couldn't see the face I made at him, which didn't stop me from making it. My sweatshirt was on the chair next to my bed, right where I'd left it. Everything, these days, was right where I had left it. I'd been buying an extra can of peanuts from Mr. G for myself and a bag of apples from C-Town. There was a small pile of cores on the trunk in front of the couch. Usually on Saturdays, I'd tell my dad that we were going to the park, and he'd ask me if I had any requests for dinner. He'd give me pizza money, extra if he needed me to pick up something from C-Town on my way home, 3 pork chops maybe, or a pound of green beans. Of course, my dad wasn't there. I looked at the closed door leading into my mom's room. The little faucets were still in my sweatshirt pocket, but I liked their soft weight and decided to hold on to them for a bit. The night before, my mom hadn't even opened her eyes when I dropped off her stuff and the leftovers from Wuhan. I could give her the faucets when I got home from the park. Alex was still lying out there on the fire escape, one leg crossed over the other, eyes closed against the sun like he was taking a nap. I found this so annoying that I didn't knock on the glass or anything to tell him I was done. I just left. Still, by the time I got downstairs, he was sitting on the loading dock with one leg swinging like he'd been waiting down there the whole time. I honestly don't know how he gets down. I've never been fast enough to see him do it. "What took you so long?" he asked like he was curious. I balled my hands into fists and kept walking. At the corner of Greene and Prince, though, I couldn't stop myself from looking back at the front of the building he'd climbed. He'd Spider-Man'd his way up the front, cramming his fingers and toes into cracks too small to see, and then leaned out to grab the metal ladder, coming down from the fire escape like he was catching a trapeze. A trapeze without no nets, 25 feet off the ground. If she knew, his mom would kill him for sure. To be honest, it made my stomach float too. Alex acted like it was nothing, but it was something, and that something was a long way down. So it seems like she's getting upset with her best friend Alex because of her circumstances in her life. So has that ever happened to any of you before? Has something bad been going on? Oh, here's Grant. Has anything bad ever been going on in your life that nobody else knew about, and you just decided to maybe not be the most friendly, and maybe that person got on your nerves in some way that they had not before, and all of that's new to you? All that's new to them, and so you just kind of are upset with them, sometimes for no reason. It happens. I know that moms and dads do that sometimes when we have things that we're not telling our kids about, and then sometimes those things that they do that are normally super normal, all of a sudden just get on the mom and dad's nerves. So it happens.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
I know you never get on my nerves.
I do a lot. I'm always on your nerves.
No, not always, just sometimes. All right, I will read some more next time. Bye-bye.